sort of realized that I know enough from my experiences over the last 15 years that I want to work in health and fitness and just help other people figure out how to be healthy as well.
Yeah, and not to fall into the same sort of pitfalls, and then we all end up learning the same lessons. So maybe by sharing some of the things that we learned the hard way, we can save people some time and years. Since we both are Indian, understand the struggles and the unique challenges that Indians face as well in their diet and lifestyle, and so bringing some of that into the show as well. Hey everyone, I'm Preethi.
And hi, I'm Eeshita.
And welcome to the Desi Fit Chicks podcast. And today we're going to just introduce ourselves and talk a little bit about what this podcast is going to be all about. And in future episodes, we'll actually dive deep into the topics that we'll get into. So we'll start with introduction. So my name is Preethi. I'm currently working on my new blog, which I launched about 6 months ago. It's called fitpreethi.com. And my goal with it is to share health and fitness knowledge that I've learned over the last 2 decades through my own experimentation, research, and just living it, honestly, and learning hard lessons the hard way. And besides that, I am a mom and I'm a tech founder as well. So I'll let Eeshita do her introduction, and then we'll get into details about our backgrounds and how we got into health.
Yeah, hi, and I'm Eeshita. I am a founder in health. Over the last few months, I've been building Thea AI, which is an app that is designed to simplify health and fitness, particularly for women. I have also had a very interesting and long journey with health. I used to be an international athlete. I injured my knee and I stopped playing. I've also been working in tech for the last few years. I led monetization at a fintech startup. And over the last 5 to 7 years, I've just been very interested in health and fitness and trying to go from being an athlete to not being an athlete and gaining weight, to sort of losing the weight, and then realizing that it's actually not the best thing in the world to lose a lot of weight. So trying to get stronger, learning how to eat better. And that's been sort of, my journey so far. And I'm trying to document it, build an app and share it with the community. But we'll go into that in a little bit.
Awesome. So the first question is, we wanted to kind of give a background about our careers and how they've evolved and how they've been impacted by our health. So I can get started. So my career, predominantly before doing some of the more nutrition and fitness stuff recently, I was in tech. I was in engineering college, and I worked at Goldman Sachs after graduating, doing fintech, and then I worked at Andreessen Horowitz doing venture capital investing. And then I joined Coinbase as a software engineer. And so I got into the whole crypto space. And then I was a founder myself. I tried to start my own company that was venture backed, and that didn't work out. But I learned a lot of really important lessons in company building through that. And I would say tech is a very fast-paced, rigorous field, and people often sacrifice their health and wellness for work. Techies tend to be some of the least healthiest people, in my opinion, because they're so obsessed with the computer and coding and just working that sometimes health becomes a backseat. I didn't always feel like I was necessarily unhealthy in the way that they were, in the sense that I was very active. I was, still working out every day. I was eating clean. I was doing all the right things, even though I was in tech. But I was taking everything to an extreme. So because I was working really long hours, I was not getting enough sleep. And I was eating very little, and I had lost a lot of weight that affected my hormonal health, my fertility, all of that kind of went down the drain with my work. And so I think because I was in my early 20s and when I was in the prime of my career in tech, I was able to kind of get away with it for a while, but after some time, it just started to really break me down physically and mentally. And that's when I knew that I had to take my health seriously and actually understand what health really means, and understand it from like a root cause perspective. And we'll get into our stories later on, but definitely being in tech, it was I was so driven to like succeed in tech that I overworked myself and compromised my health. And because of that, I had to learn what health means and how to come back to a healthy, balanced state while still, being able to work and do the things I want. So that was kind of my career and how health kind of played a role in it. So Ishita, do you want to share your side of the story?
Yeah, I've had very similar experiences. So yeah, like I was mentioning, I used to play tennis. I was competing in a lot of tennis tournaments. I was traveling a lot. So for most of my life, from the time I was 5 until like 15, I was extremely healthy, very active. Also, just strong. So I sort of, I weighed. I was never like obsessed with being thin. Just strong, and like playing tennis, you just develop a lot of muscle. After I stopped playing tennis because of my knee injury, I moved to the UK to study. And yeah, I think that's where things started going south a little bit. So I sort of, one, it was a big cultural shock, and like I didn't know what to eat. I'd been staying at home with my parents until then, and really like figuring life out at 17 that was interesting, and I put on a lot of weight. I was still playing like, a little bit for the King's tennis team, but not enough to sort of, not put on weight based at the rate at which I was eating. And then I really wanted to get into investment banking. I don't really know why now, but I just really did at that time. And I wanted to go for the hardest, like, the most intense banking sort of sub field, which was M&A, mergers and acquisitions. And I did. I interned in my team for 2 summers. It was fun, and essentially like looking as an intern to the people who were working in the team was like, oh my God, these people are so cool, and they're doing really cool work. Yes, the lifestyle was incredibly unhealthy. But yeah, I decided to join after I graduated. So I went and did M&A for 3 years. And I think that was probably like my lifestyle was the unhealthiest that it probably is ever going to be. So I was routinely surviving on 4 to 6 hours of sleep, many nights, much less than that. Wasn't really eating healthy, wasn't really eating at home, was just like in the office all the time and just eating whatever I can get my hands on. With that was also like this coupled with this like pressure of just like looking good and being thin. So I just wasn't eating enough. And I was actually the thinnest I've been in my whole life, but also probably the unhealthiest that I could have been in that time. I moved on from banking to tech. For me, like the switch was, even though I was still working reasonably hard, like similar to you, Preethi, really sort of, trying to be like determined, trying to like make it work and trying to be really driven. The hours were like, they were much better. But again, I was like routinely like working late in the evenings, but not until like 4 in the morning, more like 8, 9 p.m. And I sort of got back into health and fitness in that time. I started cycling. I'd never cycled before, just really got into cycling, got into weightlifting, started doing yoga, which I had done previously, got back into cooking again. And I think like that's how in the last few years, I just really started getting into health and fitness. And then I sort of realized that I know enough from my experiences over the last like 15 years that I want to work in health and fitness and just help other people figure out how to be healthy as well.
Yeah, and not to fall into the same sort of pitfalls that we've fallen into, because I see it too in younger women, or maybe even women my age, who are just kind of falling into the same traps, and then we all end up learning the same lessons. So maybe by sharing some of the things that we learned the hard way, we can save people some time and years, so that they don't have to go through those same experiences. But yeah, I think in terms of next, like let's sort of talk about our workouts and our diets at a very high level. We'll definitely get into this a lot more detail in future episodes, but just to give everyone, a high level overview of like our philosophy, I guess, on how we work out and how we diet. And I'll preface by saying that like there's really no one right way to do it because everybody's different. Everybody likes, has different preferences. And so there are multiple ways to be healthy and multiple diets that can get you to the same end goal. And so this is not to say that what we're doing is like the absolute only right way, but it's what we've kind of come to through experimentation. And we hope that, we continue to iterate on it and get better at it. But let's start with our workouts maybe. Do you want to go first? Like, what does your workout regimen look like on a weekly basis? What do you try to prioritize, and like, what's your goals there?
Yeah. It's so I've had an again very interesting evolution, and now I'm trying to go to the gym or like on the bike like 3 to 4 times a week. I wish I could go every day for shorter durations. But I just am lazy when it comes to that. So if I have to, go and do a workout, like I've always been like a bigger endurance athlete. So I would just prefer to go for longer durations and just go fewer times. So I do try to go, like I go into cycling. I have a road bike, and it's much easier to bike in London and in Europe. And there's just much better tracks. You can, like in the summer, I will usually go out like once a week, once every 2 weeks on a very long ride. So like between 100 and 150 kilometers, which is like a big, it's a big endurance. But then like I actually don't need to, I can maybe do one recovery ride at home and like that's it. Like I'm done with my cardio. In the winter, like cardio, like it's just harder to do because you have to do it indoors. It's just very miserable outside. So it's not possible to really get out. So then I try to go like maybe 2 to 3 times a week. On my training bike. I have a training bike in my living room, and I try to do like one endurance ride. So like at or near, like just below probably at functional threshold power, which is a cycling metric, but like just not exerting myself, just cycling at a decent cadence for like an hour. I try to do one like really intense workout, but that's like very intense bursts of short activity. It's like a VO2 max workout. And if I still have time, I try to do my least favorite activity, which is like threshold training, where you're just like on the bike for an hour. And it's the hardest because it's not like very short bursts of intense activity. It's also not very chilled endurance riding. It's just like an hour at or near your threshold, which is just very difficult. I find it the most difficult to do. I've not been doing it for weeks now. And then like I would love to go to the gym and like train more. So I've always enjoyed weightlifting, and I think the healthiest I've been is when I've been lifting weights. But I've not been like really lifting seriously in the last few months. So I think one of my resolutions this year is to like start going to the gym more often and just lift a bit more. And then I usually try and like round that out with either yoga. I've been to Pilates classes 1 or 2 times, but I much prefer yoga. So like doing one yoga session every week, just to like, stretch the muscles, be more flexible, learn more balance, and just sort of round up the workout. But like, what do you do, Preethi?
Yeah, so you're a very endurance athlete. I actually used to be that way. And then more recently, I'm definitely more of I prefer shorter sprint or shorter workouts that I can work. I don't mind working out even twice a day if it's like for 45 minutes. So my current regimen is, since I am a dancer and I have basically class 3 times a week, so dance takes up basically every weekday. So it's like about, I would say, an hour a day in the morning for either practice or my class. And the type of dance I do, it's Indian classical dance. So it gets like my cardio in for the day too. So it's kind of like I get both in one package. I get like the artistic, skill-based sport as well as the cardio. And then Besides that, I lift twice a week. Like you said, I do feel best when I'm lifting. I try to, if like I'm super busy or just, not feeling it, I try to get at least one time a week, but twice a week is like where I try to keep my lifting. And I mostly focus on lower body. I should do more upper body training, but I don't like upper body strength training. I find it very boring. I think lower body is just so much fun, like training glutes and quads and hamstrings. You just get like a really big pump and it feels really good. So I do that twice a week. And I also do Pilates a couple times a week. So it's my way of building the strength I need in like the smaller muscles and the core for dance, but without like overexerting myself, because dance is already pretty, it's pretty intense. So I tried everything outside of dance to keep it low intensity. So like I don't do any HIIT or anything outside of dance, because like I know that what I'm doing with dance is enough and I don't want to overdo it, because I've learned the hard way not to overdo it. So Pilates is a gentle way to still get strong without overexerting yourself, because it's not like you're not like sweating or like doing high intensity stuff. When you're doing Pilates, it's pretty moderate or slow paced, but I find that it works really effectively for core and core strength and just strengthening the small muscles that we often forget about. So those three are my main things. And then besides that, I do go for a lot of walks. So I have 2 big dogs, like I was telling you, and they keep me active. So I go for at least 2 long walks a day with them. And walking is just a nice way to just get outdoor, get some vitamin D. And I just feel like myself when I'm outdoor, at least for a couple hours a day, rather than being indoors. So that's my other form of cardio, I guess. But yeah, that's kind of my workout routine now. I mean, and it fluctuates, like there was a period where I was only doing yoga and not Pilates. And now I'm doing Pilates and not yoga. I would love to do all of them, but it's just too much. Like I have to kind of pick and choose in a certain season of my life what I want to focus on and eliminate the rest, and then come back to things when I feel like it's the right time.
And when you're doing your weightlifting, usually, so what are you doing for lower body? Like what kind of exercises? Are you doing free weights? Are you doing assisted? Would love to hear a bit more and maybe like take some inspiration as well.
Yeah, it's a good question. There was a long time where I was lifting weights, trying to create my own programs. And at some point I was like, you know what, like I'm just gonna like delegate the program creation to someone else who's like obsessed with and really good at creating programs, because I just had to admit to myself that I don't really have the utmost knowledge of strength training that some of the physical trainers out there in the world have. Nowadays, I feel like I've gained a lot of knowledge, but when I started using someone else's program like a couple of years ago, I felt like I was still like beginner intermediate in lifting, and so I wanted to use someone else's program. So my training is I'm using someone else's program. His name is Paul, and he's on Instagram, and he's a very, 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 very good physical trainer, and he has a program for women, and it's usually 2 days lower body and 2 days upper body. And I skip the upper body. I just do the lower body, and his exercises are a mix of machines and barbell and like free weights here and there. Not too often, but it's mostly machines and the barbell. So, for example, yesterday's workout was seated leg curls, seated leg extensions, glute press, calf press, and there was one more in there that I'm forgetting. So it was like it's 4 or 5 exercises. You can finish it in an hour, and he really focuses on getting you to increase your weight, so progressive overload. And that's a huge focus of the program. And he does it in a way where his reps are designed to get you to increase your weight, because he'll sort of lower the rep range as the weeks go on, so that you're forced to increase the weight to actually feel anything. So yeah, that's the program I do. And for anyone who's a beginner, I highly recommend just finding someone really good and getting their program, because you're just going to save a lot of time. And it's just a lot more. They've been through their trials and errors to figure out what works on the body and what doesn't. And so I would say just do that rather than trying to come up with your own program. And once you're like an intermediate lifter, then you can sort of get creative and try to figure out what works for you.
Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense. I started, like when I first started lifting, I think I was doing Mike Matthews' program. And it was very good. It even came with like a little workbook for women. Just very structured. But and then I sort of really started enjoying it. And then I sort of stopped doing the program and just started thinking, okay, well, I'm going to go and I'll do one day of, upper body, one day of lower body, and like one day just mixed. And a few years later, I'm not really training very seriously anymore. So yeah, I think I can go back to, I should definitely think of going back to a program.
Yeah, no, I definitely, and plus it's just when someone else creates it for you, at least for me, I feel more motivated to go because like it's structured. There's a structure there. You can just follow the structure. You don't have to think about it. Whereas like if you're creating your own program, you have to figure out, okay, like what days am I going to go? What exercises I'm going to do what day? And then it can be harder to follow that structure because you created it yourself. So I just find that for something like lifting, I just find following the structure is better.
I think one thing I've struggled with, whenever I sort of feel a little bit guilty when I'm going to the gym, especially if I'm doing longer workouts, I just feel like, oh my God, like I should be doing like some work or something. It's the old banker in me, coming out. So I know, right? So I often try and this is also why I stopped doing programs, because they are hard in some way and you can't actually focus on anything else while you're doing them. Whereas nowadays, or like for the last few years, I've tried to like do something while I'm at the gym. So I'm listening to a podcast, but also like taking notes while I'm doing it or watching videos. And I often find that if you're doing that and working out at the same time, you're actually not able to sustain like a high enough like intensity of workout. On the bike, whenever I'm doing endurance workouts, I'm able to actually like do something else. But when I'm doing VO2 max or threshold, I just can't. I'm almost used to it. But yeah, I think that's probably where like I feel a little bit guilty. And therefore I try and do something else at the same time, which is just the weirdest. I shouldn't be feeling guilty about like going to the gym and like prioritizing my health.
That's definitely the old banker in you. You're trying to multitask while you're working out. I think like you'd get a lot of bang for your buck by just, maybe even shortening the workout to like 45 minutes and just trying to focus just on the workout. Instead of multitasking, or, find times when you're like, you've kind of worked a lot and your brain just needs a break. And that's when you do the workout, unless you feel like you're like still super wired all day and you can work all day.
Yeah. I think it's definitely not the case. It's just much more sort of, guilt. Also, like just, I think being Indian as well, like my parents were always very, and just just intense about, working and being disciplined.
Studies.
And like just studies, right? Like doing a lot more, which I think is not the healthiest attitude to have.
Yeah.
Especially now, yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think like it's something that you have, it's a muscle memory that you've created, and then you have to like basically learn how to like unteach yourself what you learned and reteach yourself the fact that like it is okay to take breaks and it is okay to not do anything also. Sometimes I feel that guilt that you're feeling. Now that I'm a first-time mom, I felt it like, if I'm outside playing with my son for a long time and after a while I'm like, oh, should I be working? Should I be doing something more productive? Like there's a little bit of guilt there. And I've just, at first it was a lot stronger, but I've had to like learn to recognize that like this is, looking back, this is probably going to be the times that I'm going to cherish the most. And so really taking the time to be present and not be kind of like multitasking or have my mind elsewhere is definitely a work in progress, but something I've gotten a lot better at after having a child. And yeah, I think the same thing for working out. Like, I think, just recognizing that work will always be there, but like prioritizing your health is probably, it's one of those things that you invest in, and the more you invest in it, the more you get out of it. So, I don't know. I think like you learn how to like deal with those emotions and learn how to overcome that guilt by just going inwards and being introspective about it, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. How has becoming a mom changed your fitness journey?
Fitness? That's a good question. I mean, obviously, when you're immediately postpartum, it changes a lot. Like the first depending on how your labor went, how intense it was, how your recovery is, anywhere between the first 3 to 6 weeks, you're not doing much besides walking. That's kind of what I did. So the first 3 to 4 weeks, I just walked. And then I also used the sauna a couple times a week just to sweat and like feel like I'm working out, even though I'm not. And then I started strengthening my pelvic core and pelvic floor muscles before I actually started working out. So I did that for a few weeks. And then I started introducing Pilates. And then finally, once I felt comfortable in Pilates, I started doing dance. So like I didn't start dance until probably 6 to 8 weeks postpartum. And it's really hard initially to, put aside the time to do a workout when you have like this tiny human being to take care of. And, you're like the mother is probably the most important thing for the child, at least in the first 6 months, where they're super bonded to you because they've been inside you for 6 months. And so they need you constantly. So taking that time away is really hard. But luckily I had help. I've always had help. And I knew that I always wanted help because I love fitness too much. And I wanted that time to myself. Even if it was just like an hour or two a day, I just wanted that time to myself because I know that if I get that, I'd recharge and be a better mom in return. So getting help was a big, big, big factor in me being able to work out postpartum. And as he got older, it became easier to incorporate my workouts because now dad can watch him, or, he's more independent. He can play by himself. And so it gets easier and you figure out ways to incorporate it into your day, even if it's like short bursts or whatnot. And luckily my gym has like a childcare center. So whenever I go lift, I let him play there, and he has like so much fun because there's other kids and toys and stuff. So he enjoys it. So it's like a win-win for both of us. Like I get to do my workout. He gets to play with other kids. But it's one of those things, like every journey is different and you kind of figure it out as you go. And some moms, they feel really guilty because they just don't have the help, and so they're not able to get back to working out like they want to. And I think the key thing there is just accepting that like it's a season of life, and at some point they're gonna, a couple of years they're gonna be older and they're gonna be in school, and then you're gonna have a lot of time to yourself. So you just have to go with the flow.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So do we want to shift to diets as well, just to give people an overview of sort of how we eat nowadays and like what types of things we try to prioritize in our diet?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Should I start?
I'm happy for you to start. Yep, go for it.
I can go for
it.
So I think diet is probably more important than exercise for health. You can still be moderately healthy without exercising, but even if you exercise a ton, and you eat like shit, at some point it's going to catch up to you, in my opinion. So I've learned that diet is probably the most important thing that you could do to not only regain health, but like maintain your health and strength and all of that. So my diet currently is, and this has been after years of experimentation, I've kind of landed at this. Currently, I would say, I don't know how I would classify my diet, but it's Ray Peat inspired, but it's not like exactly what he proposes. It's like inspired by a bunch of philosophies that I've done in the past, taking the best of them and kind of incorporating them into what works for my body. So this is probably like a mix of like carnivore, a mix of Ray Peat, a mix of trying to think like high protein diet all into like one diet. And so I try to prioritize protein as a macronutrient. I try to prioritize protein as a macronutrient. I try to get at least like 120 to 140 grams of protein a day. So about 1 gram per pound of body weight. And then if I get that amount of protein, the carbs and fats kind of settle themselves because the protein has fat in it naturally. And then I just eat whatever carbs I want. And I do get most of my protein from animal sources because they are the best source of protein. And they're a lot more digestible and bioavailable than plant-based protein. And I just don't feel like my body digests plant proteins as well as they do animal proteins. So I'll have like beef at least a few times a week, chicken a few times a week, fish maybe 1 or 2 times a week as my protein sources. And besides that, dairy is a huge protein source for me. I have dairy, probably 3 or 4 servings of dairy a day. And so there's a good amount of protein there. And then besides that, like I said, the carbs and fats kind of just come with the meal. So like if I'm cooking chicken, whatever oils I use will have fats in it. The chicken itself may have some fat in it. Dairy has a lot of fat in it. And so all of that, like I just kind of focus on eating whole foods and then the rest kind of falls into place. And then when I say Ray Peat inspired, the other factor there is like his whole philosophy is that you should eat foods that help build up and keep your metabolism high, because a high metabolism is a high metabolism is a sign of a healthy body that's functioning properly. Like if your metabolism is shut down or very low, it means your body is kind of preserving itself. It's not necessarily feeling safe. And so it's conserving its energy by lowering the metabolism. So I try to eat foods and eat a diet that allows my metabolism to be revved up and high. So I eat a pretty high calorie diet, like minimum 2,200 a day, oftentimes more because I'm pretty active. And I'd like to get that up to even more. And as you build up your metabolism, you can eat more and more without gaining weight. And that's sort of the goal of my diet. It's like, how can I continue to build my metabolism up so that I can eat more and allow my body to use it as fuel instead of storing it as fat. So that's kind of my diet. Do you want to share yours?
Yeah. Wow, that is that's a fun philosophy, and it's definitely like inspired by, I think, the right things. I would love to be eating more like you, Preethi, for sure. But I have a different diet, a very different diet. So I'm not hungry in the mornings, so I will usually not be eating breakfast. Like I just never have been since I was a child. Because I was playing tennis before, my parents forced me to eat breakfast. But I've always just don't feel hungry in the mornings at all. If I am planning to go on the bike like in the early afternoon for an hour, 2 hours, then I will force myself to eat oats in the morning just to get like the carbs to be able to go on the bike. But usually my first big meal is like noon, and it's usually like quite a big lunch. I also try to eat proteins, not 120 grams a day. I think like I would love to eat closer to 100 grams a day.
Yeah.
And sort of I'm thinking of that as like 2 times body weight in terms of kilograms. But I think the average for last week for me was like 75 grams of protein a day. And I get pretty much all my protein from animal meat as well. I tend to eat a lot of chicken breast. And I think chicken breast from the primary source for me of protein. I also eat fish. So I like white fish. I'll I'll eat. Last night I had like a very nice sea bass. I do like beef. I don't eat that much of it. I wish I would eat more of it, but I do what I do. I do like, like a nice lean beef lasagna, just incredible. Absolutely love it. So I try and get a lot of my protein from meats as well. I usually eat like a good amount of fat, but I try to keep the saturated fat content low. And this is just because I love snacking. I love crisps. I love various things that are not good for me. So over the years, I've had to find like healthier alternatives. So I usually try and keep my saturated fat intake below 15 grams a day. So that's sort of, I'm consuming enough fats, but not unhealthy fats. What else do I really like carbs. So I like, big pasta meals. I eat pasta probably like 3 or 4 times a week, but like fresh egg pasta, a lot easier to get it, like, freshly made in Europe. So just like eating like fresh pasta with like a nice sort of protein, good amount of like cheese. So I also absolutely love dairy, like fresh cheese, and really trying to keep the protein intake high. I know a lot of people like to like reduce carbs. I actually really like carbs, and I do enough like amount of endurance activity that I do like burn it pretty easily. I've always had like a faster metabolism. So I've never had to, I don't usually gain weight easily, and I am able to lose weight fairly easily. So it's always, like, it's never been like a big deal in terms of like diet, but I'm trying to eat less, mainly because like these days I'm working out a lot less. I've just been very busy with life, and I'm just not working out as frequently as I would like. When I am working out, like for instance, like oftentimes we're traveling and like biking like every day in Italy, for instance, like those days I'm probably eating like north of 3,000 calories, probably between 3,000 to 4,000 calories. But when I'm in London and not actually like going out, I sort of try and keep below 2K calories. So I'm like maybe eating 1,700, 1,800 calories a day. And I try and like supplement. Do you supplement, by the way, Preethi? Do you eat any supplements?
I do supplement, yeah.
Yeah. What supplements do you take?
What supplements do I take? I take several. So I take omega-3 fish oil. I take vitamin D in the winters and falls. Not so much in the summer and spring. And then I take magnesium, which is a big one for me. Definitely helps with sleep and just calmness. I take CoQ10 and selenium. I think that's pretty much what I take, yeah. And this I've like, optimized over time. Like there was a period where I was taking completely different supplements, but depending on what my blood work, what my body needs in that season of life, I'll sort of adjust my supplements by working with my functional doctor. Like for example, there'll be periods where I'm not taking selenium. There'll be periods where I'm taking zinc if somehow my zinc level's lowered. So you gotta figure out what works and adjust from there.
Yeah, I think I have a similar base as well. So I take high dose omega-3 too. So usually like 2 grams of EPA and DHA in triglyceride form, so it's very absorbable. I also have to take vitamin D because I live in Europe and there's just no sun here. So I take vitamin D year round. Vitamins D and K actually. And then I take sulforaphane. I started having athletic greens when I became lactose intolerant after a stomach infection and antibiotics. I actually really like it. I saw some videos over the past few weeks which were just talking about how, the dosage of various nutrients in athletic greens is just not enough to make a difference. But for me, I think just keeping my stomach balanced. So the one I've always had like a strangely sensitive stomach. So I sort of, I'm just not able to, I can eat dairy very well, but then I became lactose intolerant with my antibiotics. I usually don't I've just had a strange stomach with like spicy food, like often upsetting it. Very easily getting stomach infections. So I think athletic greens for me just really helps with that. So yeah, but mainly I think if I have to take one, I just try and take the omega-3s like every day.
Yeah. I used to take athletic greens too. I think I did it for about 6 months, and then I don't know, I'd moved and then I totally forgot about ordering it again. I just stopped. But it does give you like a good boost of energy. You don't notice like a massive difference, but it's like I used to take it before my workouts actually, and just notice a little bit of a boost, and just you kind of get like a whole gamut of vitamins in one little packet, so it's nice. Um, Going back to the diet thing, we may have to do a show on we may have to do a show on saturated fats and try to convince you that they're actually not as bad for you as mainstream medicine says they are. So we'll save that for another day. But yeah, I think getting your protein from animal sources is definitely awesome. Unfortunately, this is something that Indians struggle with a lot because a lot of Indians are vegetarians. So we'll definitely get into that in another episode too. Like if you are a vegetarian, how can you still get enough protein? And make sure that you're not like protein deficient, because then it leads to all sorts of issues in the long run. So we'll get into that as well. Okay, so should we move on to the next portion where we want to talk about like what to expect on the show?
Yeah. Let's do it.
So where should we start?
Maybe we can start with like why, like how this show is going to be like unique. There's so many health and fitness shows out there. Like what exactly we will be focusing on, and I can give sort of a little bit, like I can start and like give a little bit of perspective, and then would love for you to like add on as well, Preethi. But I think like for me, like the most I've struggled with in health and fitness has been that I've sort of tried to gravitate toward extreme fitness at different times in my life. And I've really oscillated between extreme fitness and not doing anything at all. And this has happened quite a few times. And I've just really struggled to stay on track with like a good diet, with a good fitness schedule, like really sort of finding something that works for me. And sort of really building motivation around it, building momentum around it. And like with my fitness journey, I have like found things that work for me. And things that just don't, and like really like coming up with an experimentation process as well, like trying new things and how to try new things, right? Like how long to try new things for. A good example of this is Bikram yoga, which I did for a whole year, but just hated so much that I just thought I'm never going back. And I would not recommend like a year's worth of experimentation, but oftentimes you have to give yourself enough time to try something before moving on to something else. I think that for me is like actually being mindful and holistic about health, not just being into extreme fitness where you're just going to the gym and bulking for 6 months and then just completely falling off the wagon and never going to the gym again.
Yeah, that's a great perspective. And I don't know why you didn't like Bikram yoga. I actually did it for a year too and loved it, but then I just didn't have time to keep going.
It's just so hot. Oh my God. It's so, I have like a studio literally like 5 minutes walk from me. And I bought the yearly subscription, and I went every day, like for every week for like a whole year. I just didn't like, it's just too hot for me. Even though I'm from North India. So I really should like be used to the heat. And I played tennis in like, 40 degrees heat. Just couldn't like, also it like really smelled the studio.
It smells, yeah.
So
that
yeah,
I agree
it just, yeah.
Yeah, I love the heat. I love sweating. So it was like a really therapeutic experience for me to sweat. But I agree, like the smell there is kind of off. In terms of what to expect on the show, in addition to like, not doing extremes and focusing on more nuance and balance, on a similar vein, it's like, exploring different diet philosophies and just our philosophies on fitness, and recognizing that it's a gray area for a lot of things. And it doesn't need to be dogmatic. It doesn't need to be like, this is right and this is wrong. And even me and you may disagree on a certain topic, but we can at least see each other's perspectives and talk about that perspective in a calm and intellectual way, rather than getting angry or upset over it. So I think that's another big part of this show, is that we want to be level-headed and look at it from a scientific, evidence-based and practical point of view rather than an emotional point of view. And then I would say the other thing to expect is, since we both are Indian, we understand the struggles and the unique challenges that Indians face as well in their diet and lifestyle and health and fitness. So bringing some of that into the show as well, so that the Indian women or even Indian men who may follow the show can take away lessons from it. Because it is definitely one thing I've recognized over the last few years is that genetics is a very, very real thing, and your health is affected by your genetics. And Indians have a very unique genetic history and profile. And some of the things that might work for a Westerner don't work as well for an Indian. And so there's like definitely unique challenges to being Indian. For example, we store more body fat naturally. We're less carb tolerant unless we're very active. Like there's a lot of little nuances that matter, which add up in the long run. So focusing a little bit there as well. And yeah, so I think that's what you can expect on the show. I'm trying to think if there's anything else.
Yeah, me too. I'm thinking, I think we can also, like, we've both had like very unique experiences with our like weight. I think like definitely would love to get into that. What is like the right way of thinking about your weight? What's the right way of losing weight if you have to? Are you at the right like weight for yourself? Like, is being slightly heavier better? If for instance, you're at peak reproductive health, right? Like being like almost like starvation, right, does lead to just the body shutting down, like just bad, like not great reproductive function. The body does divert energy to just surviving, like that kind of sort of how much metabolic stress is good metabolic stress, especially for women, where childbearing and in the peak reproductive years, like what's like the right like training, fitness, weight loss journey. Now, I think especially as I've been doing a bunch of like user interviews with people about the app that I've been building, one of the key goals that has come up for women, millennial and Gen Z women, is just losing weight. And a lot of it is driven by like better appearance. Like it is like the primary or secondary goal of losing weight. It is just better appearance. Even though, like, interestingly, like if you think about it from an evolutionary perspective, it is kind of the opposite of what like one should be striving for when you're thinking about like better sort of reproductive function. So I think like that's, and especially like this, there's a lot of Western standards of attractiveness that a lot of people try to stick to. How to like what is good, what is not. Of course. Morbid obesity is not great because like that has a lot of bad outcomes, but also starvation is not great because it impairs reproductive function. So what is the right approach when it comes to weight, and how to like go about managing your weight in a good way?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think weight is it's especially as a female, it's women tend to weigh themselves a lot and compare themselves a lot to other women and how they look and how their bodies look compared to XYZ women. That's just how we are by nature. And figuring out like what body and what weight is the right one for you is definitely something that's an introspective journey. And also, letting go of some of the cultural expectations to truly understanding, what your body needs and what you need in the moment. There was a period, and there are still some cultures where they prize women who are a lot more curvy. They actually think that women who are thin are less, I don't know if I want to say attractive, but they just know, the men know that they're less fertile. And so some cultures still to this day prize women who are a lot more curvy. But I feel like in the West, it's kind of changed. And now like thinness is like the new sexy for women. And I think sometimes there are a lot of thin, very attractive women who like on the inside, they have like, very poor reproductive health. So like really recognizing that just being pretty on the outside doesn't mean that everything is going well on the inside. So how do you create that balance? And that's a really good point. And talking about that is going to be really important, especially for the women who are listening.
I think then the last one is like both of our backgrounds are in tech, and really sort of covering health tech, AI, how AI is going to impact health. We've both been like experimenting in this stage, in this space. I've been actively building in this space. I think Preethi would love to hear from you on this as well.
Yeah, no, I'm super excited to talk about that because like we do have a tech background, like we said, and we do still nerd out about this stuff. Like I love like learning about like what's possible to do with AI and health. And just having a few episodes on that will be really, really fun because I think it's just going to change how we are able to optimize and maintain our health, like with AI. And we're still like so early in terms of what's possible and what people are doing with it, that it's an interesting and exciting time. So definitely excited to talk about that for, the people who are into tech. Yeah. Trying to see if there's anything else.
I think we might have covered, all our topics. I think the last thing would be, I would love to hear from like our listeners as well. What topics they would like us to cover. We have some thoughts on the future episodes, but if there are any questions, burning questions, anything that they would like us to discuss, I think we can definitely like take that on the show. It's a new show, so we are still experimenting and would love to hear from everyone on what they would like us to chat about.
Yeah, it's going to be a learning journey, I think, or I know, not I think. And every topic will give us more insight into what you guys like and what you guys don't like. So hopefully over time, we'll be able to create episodes that you find informative and you find useful. So the more feedback we can get, the better. Yeah, I don't know. Is there anything else we want to cover in today's episode?
I think we're good. I think we can call it.
Yeah, I think we can call it. Okay. Do you want to close off?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're very much very excited about the show. Very much looking forward to discussing all of this, covering various topics: diet, fitness, nutrition, AI, and just watch this space.
Yeah. Thanks everyone for joining, and we'll see you in the next episode.